I never imagined it would be the quiet moments that undid me. For the longest time, I thought my marriage was simply what marriage eventually became. Predictable. Quiet. Measured. Eli and I had been together for nearly 10 years. We didn't argue, but we also didn't laugh. We coexisted in a routine that felt safe but slowly started to choke the air out of me. Somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing each other. He buried himself in work. I buried myself in pretending not to notice. Then Jason moved into the upstairs unit. He was young, 27, maybe. A few years younger than me. Tall, lean, with this rough sort of handsomeness that didn't try to impress. He spoke little, kept to himself, and never brought trouble. When I first showed him the place, he seemed almost too polite. Reserved. He called me once, and I laughed, telling him I wasn't that old. He smiled, barely, but it stayed with me. At first, I didn't think of him much beyond being a tenant. But something shifted the day I saw him in the backyard. It was hot, blisteringly so, and I was watering the plants when he stepped out shirtless, wiping sweat from his neck with a towel. I turned to say hello, caught a glimpse, and immediately looked away. But not before I noticed his body. Toned. Natural. Not like someone who lived at the gym, but like someone who simply worked with his hands. I hated how my cheeks flushed. I hated how I thought about it later. Then came the power outage. A storm had swept in quickly, cutting off electricity across the neighborhood. Eli was away at a conference, his third one this month. I lit candles and tried to enjoy the quiet, pouring myself a glass of wine. It was too silent, too still, and I kept checking my phone out of boredom. That's when a knock came at the door. It was Jason, holding a small flashlight and an unopened bottle of wine. "You all right down here?" he asked, his voice calm but kind. "I'm fine. Just embracing the darkness, I guess." He chuckled, then held up the wine. "I figured it's better to ride it out with company." I hesitated, looking past him, then back. "Sure. Why not?" We sat in the dim glow of candles. He poured the wine. I noticed the way his eyes moved when he talked, not fast, not searching. Just steady. He asked about my work. I told him I worked from home, which seemed to surprise him. "You carry yourself like someone important," he said. I laughed. "I'm anything but." There was a pause, one of those rare, comfortable silences that doesn't feel forced. "I hear you moving around sometimes," he said. "Late at night." I blinked. "You do?" "Yeah. Walking, mostly. Like you can't sleep." I looked away, smiling nervously. "Guess I have my restless nights." "I do too," he said quietly. Something about that admission settled into my chest. We were two strangers in the same house, separated by a floor, both walking through the night alone. After another glass of wine, I offered to show him the garden out back. We stood under the faint light of a solar lamp, watching the rain gently tap the leaves. I was suddenly aware of how close he stood. Not inappropriate, just close enough to feel. "You did all this?" he asked, nodding at the plants. "Yeah. I needed something that didn't talk back." He laughed, a real one this time. And I felt it. In my stomach. In my chest. In places I had forgotten could feel anything. When we walked back in, my hand brushed his on the doorknob. I froze. He didn't. He looked at me, eyes calm but intense, like he was seeing through every layer I'd built to survive the quiet of my marriage. "Sorry," I muttered, pulling away. "Don't be," he said. Then added, "It's your house." He turned and walked back upstairs. I stood there, staring at the closed door for longer than I should have, my pulse racing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his voice. His eyes. The way he said "don't be." I told myself it was just a moment. That I was reading too much into it. That it was loneliness twisting reality into something it wasn't. But deep down, I knew I had felt something real. And worse, I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. The next few days passed in this strange haze. I went about my routine, laundry, dishes, remote work, but I was never fully present. Every creak of the floor above made my ears perk. Every echo of his footsteps on the stairs turned my stomach in quiet anticipation. But he didn't come by. No texts. No knock on the door. Nothing. And yet, I found myself watching the window around the time I knew he returned from work. I hated how I waited for glimpses. But more than that, I hated how disappointed I felt when there were none. Then Friday came. Eli was heading out for another overnight trip. Another sales retreat in another bland hotel somewhere. He kissed my forehead, barely glancing at me. I nodded like I always did, told him to drive safe, and watched him leave without a second thought from his end. As soon as the house fell silent again, I walked into the kitchen and opened a bottle of red. I told myself it was just for me, just to relax. But deep down, I knew. I sat on the couch, scrolling mindlessly, sipping slowly. The silence crept in, that same suffocating quiet that had started to feel like the background noise of my life. I looked at the ceiling, at the familiar cracks in the plaster, and then at my phone. I didn't have a reason to text Jason. So I made one up. Hey. Power's fine tonight, but I might have opened a little too much wine. You around? It took 5 minutes before he replied. Give me 5. I stared at those words, rereading them like they carried more weight than they should. My hands were trembling. I looked down at what I was wearing, an oversized tee and yoga pants, and for some reason, I changed. Nothing too revealing. Just something softer. A cotton dress with a low back. It didn't scream seduction. It whispered vulnerability. When he knocked, I almost didn't answer. But I did. He stepped in, casual, wearing a plain gray shirt and jeans, hair slightly wet, maybe from a shower, maybe from nerves. I didn't ask. I brought the rest of that wine, he said. Figured we shouldn't let it go to waste. We sat on the couch again. Closer than last time. And this time, there was no storm, no excuse. Just a quiet understanding floating in the air between us. He asked about my day. I gave vague answers. I asked about his work. He shrugged it off. The words didn't matter. The glances did. The silences did. Our knees touched once. I didn't pull away. You look different tonight, he said after a long pause. Different good, or different weird? He tilted his head. Good. You look like yourself. I didn't know what to say to that. He watched me take a sip, then gently reached out and touched the back of my hand. Just his fingertips. I haven't stopped thinking about that night, he said quietly. I stared at our hands. Neither have I. Another pause. The kind that usually signals danger. But this one felt like a cliff. You want me to leave? He asked. I could have said yes. Should have. I opened my mouth to say it, but nothing came out. He moved a little closer. His voice dropped. Tell me to stop, Nora. My name on his lips sent a shiver down my spine. I looked up at him, our faces just inches apart now. I don't know what I want, I whispered. He leaned in. I think you do. And then he kissed me. Not forceful. Not rushed. Just firm enough to feel real, and gentle enough to give me room to run if I wanted to. But I didn't run. I leaned in. My hand found his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. His hands slid along my waist, slow and patient. There was no urgency, just something raw, something quiet and electric. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless. We shouldn't, I murmured. He pressed his forehead against mine. Then tell me to stop. I didn't. Instead, I closed the distance again. And this time, I didn't hold back. The morning sun felt like judgment. I lay there, the sheets twisted around my legs, the room still thick with the scent of what had happened. Jason's side of the bed was empty. I hadn't even heard him leave. No note. No text. Just silence. The kind that clung to my skin like guilt. I got up slowly, wrapping the blanket around me as I peeked through the window. His upstairs light was off. His car still parked. Maybe he was hiding. Or maybe I was. I took a long shower, hoping the water would wash the weight off my chest. It didn't. If anything, the steam just clouded my thoughts more. I looked at myself in the mirror afterward, eyes a little puffy, lips still slightly bruised from the night before, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked softer. Unbroken. Eli came home around noon. He walked in, kissed my cheek, and immediately went to unpack. No questions. No suspicion. No clue. He asked what I'd eaten. I lied and said I'd ordered Thai. He didn't look up from his phone. We sat in the living room for a while, the TV on, both pretending to be normal. He was scrolling through emails. I was pretending not to flinch every time I heard Jason's door upstairs creak. Later that night, Eli fell asleep on the couch, remote still in his hand. I sat at the dining table in the dark, staring at the wine glass I hadn't touched. I wondered if Jason was awake. If he was thinking about me too. Or if last night had already faded into something forgettable for him. The next day, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted, "We need to talk." He replied, "Out back." I slipped on a cardigan and walked through the kitchen, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure Eli could hear it even in his sleep. Jason was leaning against the fence, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't smile. Didn't even look surprised. "I didn't know if I should text," he said first. "Neither did I replied. A long silence stretched between us. Not the kind from before. This one felt like a wall. "I don't regret what we did," he said finally. "But I don't want to be the reason your life falls apart." I nodded slowly. "I should have stopped it." "But you didn't," he said softly. "And neither did I." I looked up at him, emotions boiling in my chest. Regret, longing, fear, confusion. All tangled into one big knot. "I don't know what this means," I whispered. "Maybe it doesn't have to mean anything," he offered, though his voice betrayed a flicker of hope. "That's the problem," I said. "It already does." He stepped closer, but not enough to touch. "I'm not going to chase this if it's just going to destroy you. Or him." Tears stung my eyes. "You don't have to worry about Eli. He stopped seeing me a long time ago." "But you still wear his ring," Jason said, eyes dropping to my hand. I looked down. The band felt heavier than ever. I twisted it once, then let my hand fall. "I can't pretend nothing happened," I said. "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "But maybe you need to figure out what you want. Before this becomes more than just one mistake." I wanted to scream that it wasn't just one mistake. That it felt more alive, more real than anything I'd touched in years. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I just nodded. And turned away. That night, I lay beside Eli, both of us facing opposite directions. His breathing was soft and even. He looked peaceful in his sleep, unaware of the cracks spreading beneath him. I stared at the ceiling, questions swirling. Was it a one-time release? A desperate cry for connection? Or the start of something that could no longer be buried? I didn't know. All I knew was that I wasn't the same woman anymore. Jason had lit something in me that Eli had let die. And I wasn't sure if I could go back to silence again. As I closed my eyes, a whisper echoed in my mind, one I hadn't said out loud yet. "I let it happen, and I don't know if I want to stop."